Hey everybody, I've got a fun one for you today because this is an absolute basket case of a car. By far the worst purchase we have ever made. We made so many mistakes, there were so many red flags, they had so many issues when it showed up, and in this video, I'm giving you the 2-year update. So here is a long and rather depressing story surrounding this car. We're big Mini people, we've owned a bunch of them. We will continue to own a bunch of them because they're just small and fun and a little bit nerdy like me. But a couple of years ago, I bought a Mini. It was just kind of a standard Cooper S, and my dad saw that and said, wouldn't it be cool if we did a video series between the Ultimate Mini and this kind of standard Cooper S? So he went out and started looking for the GP. This is a 1 of 500 specially produced limited edition models that Mini does every 7 years. It's kind of like the GT2 RS of Minis, except, you know, far less interesting in every single way, but they're kind of worth a ton of money, but he didn't want to spend a ton of money. A good Mini Cooper GP is right around $25,000 or so, which is crazy because like a standard Mini Cooper of the same age would be like $5,000 or $7,000. But you know, these are pretty sought after because they're so limited edition and very high performance. Now this one was like 10 grand less than a good one. So it was like $15,000 listed by a dealership in Texas. And that should have immediately raised some red flags, but my dad was insistent. He got him on the phone. He said, yes, it's a very, very nice Mini. It's just got a couple of little problems. All problems included things like an airbag warning light. It was said to have some cosmetic blemishes. Keep in mind, this was height of the virus, so we didn't really have an opportunity to fly down and see it in person, but my dad took the gamble anyways and had it shipped up to Colorado. And when it showed up, it was kind of a disaster, and this is like where we made every error in the book when it comes to buying a car. But like, it had a cracked windshield, it not only had the airbag light, but a TPMS problem, it had a brake warning light on the dashboard, and just lots and lots and lots of cosmetic issues. So he basically took this GP, we started working on the series, we realized that a lot of folks aren't interested in Minis, it just didn't make a lot of sense. So it ended up sitting for quite a number of months. We had a bunch of stuff fixed, like the windshield, and then he was like, you know what, this car is not doing the company any good, it's time to sell it. At which point I said, I would like to buy it from the company personally, because I'm a little bit crazy. So I sold some stuff, and then I bought it from the company, and now I'm the owner of the world's worst GP. And let me tell you what it's been like to own over the last couple of years. If you've never driven one of these newer Minis, you just have to. They are so incredibly fun. The steering response is some of the best in the world, I think, actually. And the way they turn in is so sharp and nimble, but they actually let you have a ton of fun on off-throttle oversteer. So whether you're ready or not, if you're in a situation where you're entering a turn, a lot of steering input, let off, it's going to come around on you pretty quickly, so you got to be ready to catch it. Now these cars have a couple of different modes. There's a sport button down here, and there's also a traction control off button. And because it's a GP, there's actually 2 modes. There's a GP mode and then a traction control off mode, which turns everything off. And trust me, there's been plenty of times on an autocross where I try to get a little too frisky with the tail and the thing goes woof. So for those of you who think you can't drift a front-wheel drive car, you got to try one of these newer Minis. So here's the thing about GPs, they're typically extremely low mileage and very, very, very well taken care of, because these are bought primarily and exclusively actually by folks that are really into Minis, because it didn't make a lot of sense to spend 40 grand on a Mini back in 2013 when you could get a real car with real seats and real power for the same amount of money. However, this one I think was owned by some folks that really didn't care at all about cars or at all about Minis, because this has got to be the worst GP probably ever. So let me tell you some of the things that are wrong with it. I have a feeling that this GP spent about 59,000 of its 60,000 miles on a track in a wall, because there is not really a single panel that fits properly on this car. Let's talk about the front end of it. Now, these have this little GP sticker, which is clearly faded. As you might expect, this car spent some time in Texas. It spent some time in New Mexico. This hood scoop clearly doesn't fit right. The Mini badge has worn completely through there on the front. And if you look closely, you'll start to notice some examples of orange peel and what looks to be some paint work on the front of this car. And then as we start making our way along the side, a lot more becomes apparent. Now we did have to replace the headlight because the seller, the dealership, didn't disclose when the headlights was burnt out. These are bi-xenons, so that is surprisingly expensive. Now this doesn't really fit right. I've actually replaced this. The original one fit even worse, but these cars have a really unique clamshell style hood where the whole hood opens up. And one telltale sign that your Mini has been in an accident is that it's almost impossible to get these hoods to fit correctly if they've been altered from the factory. And if you look right here, this panel gap is a complete mess. It's too narrow here, way too wide there, too narrow here, and then it's completely different on the other side. So certainly this is a panel that has either been replaced or has been fixed, and probably not very well. And then we come along the side of the car, more evidence of paint work. For some reason, there's all these little red flakes just in this one area. Not sure where that came from, not sure how that happened, but I presume it would have something to do with this mirror cap, which I think was painted. I actually think this door has been replaced altogether. And here's how I know that. When I went to get this car out of storage, after I acquired it, it had been sitting for some time, and the battery went dead. Not a big deal. In the Mini key, you've got the little switchblade, pull that out, stick it in the door to unlock it, and it doesn't turn. Major red flag. That means that this key is not actually keyed to this lock, which kind of gives me the hint that probably this whole door has been replaced. And then if you look down here, like the graphics don't quite line up correct. So I think that this whole door is new. And that's just kind of the start of the bad news. Now the seller did tell my dad that there was some paint work done, but I don't think he did a very good job kind of disclosing how much work has been done to this car, because when you open up the door, you notice, like, where is it? Right along here, that's a pretty sharp line of where something's peeling up. And then I was like, maybe I should take a magnet to the side of the car and see what's going on. Well, most of this area turns out to be Bondo, and you can kind of see that, like, right up here. Do you see that cracking? That's an indicator that there's probably a bit of Bondo. Now, you wouldn't notice it unless you're really looking for it, but I think certainly this panel's got some putty in it. And then there's other things that just aren't right. So none of this trim lines up. You can see that the side trim is not fitting right. It's also a different shade of black than everything else. This fuel filler area is completely falling out. That's not right either. You come to the back. These cars have these really cool carbon fiber spoilers. That's probably seen a little bit of better days. And then I think this car spent a lot of time in the sun, which is very unusual for a GP, because like all the red has worn out of the Cooper badging. So that's the bad news. The good news is the other side, surprisingly good. So this is like real metal. Things tend to fit a little bit better on this side, minus this little area down here. So I think that this car has had some paint work. Clearly, that doesn't match whatsoever. Stickers have probably been replaced or need to be replaced again. It's had some paint work. It's had some body work. So you're probably thinking at this point, why the heck did you buy this from the company? You should have let your dad just take the L on it and sell it to somebody. Well, the reason I bought it is for what's under the hood. This is a truly fantastic little engine. It's a 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with like 211 horsepower, but this is an absolute peach of an engine. It runs beautifully. It doesn't have any timing chain rattle, nothing like that. It's just a beautifully strong engine. The turbo pulls well, and I think mechanically this car is pretty sorted. Plus the GP has cool stuff like this strut brace along the top of the engine there. It's got a lot of suspension changes. These have height adjustable Bilstein dampers. Really advanced stuff. They actually sat lower than a standard John Coupe works. The suspension feels really good in this car. And then we get to stuff like the brakes. He's had 6-piston front calipers. This is one of the fastest decelerating cars ever when this car was new in 2013, but the brakes are huge, the discs are good, and it all feels really good mechanically. So that is the main reason I bought this car, because I got into autocross. So last summer I went to my first couple of autocross events and just fell in love with it. And that's really when I decided, okay, I gotta buy this car from the company, because this is an absolute autocross rocket. Now, I've learned a lot like primarily tires are an insanely big deal. I started the autocross season on the Pirelli tires that we had on this car, which was just like a performance all season, thinking I was going to be cool stuff, and it was just garbage. So then I immediately went out and invested in these Sparco wheels and a set of the Falcon Azini tires, and I've actually run quite a number of events now with these tires, and it's time to replace them actually for this upcoming summer. But I've really fallen in love with this like amateur motorsport thing. I'm pretty crap at it, quite crap at it. I'm taking a few schools. I took a school last year, got a couple more on the schedule this year. But that's why I bought this car, right? And it's perfect for that, because someone's already done the damage, right? Someone's already crashed it and torn off some trim and whatever. So now that I can run it into cones, right? If this was a really nice GP, I would hate doing that. I'd feel terrible about that because, you know, they're expensive and they're limited production. Someone's already done the vast majority of the damage. What's the worst I can do? A little bit more, and that's why this thing is perfect. Plus, they were set up for autocross. And this number is something pretty cool, actually. All these cars were numbered here in the States from 0 to 500, and I didn't have a number on this car, so I reached out to the folks at Mini, and it turns out there is a guy who has a filing cabinet in his office at the headquarters in New Jersey. And there he's got copies of all the original GP numbers. So in case that, you know, a car lost its number or had some paint work done, they have a spare one. So this is actually number 95, and you send them the VIN, and then they send you your new number, which is pretty cool for all the GP owners out there. If you need a duplicate, that's the word, they've got one in a storage cubby in New Jersey. Now, from a daily drivability standpoint, the GP is not fantastic, to be honest with you. They did stuff like remove all of the buttons on the steering wheel, which is kind of cool, you're thinking, except you realize, well, there's no cruise control. There's also no rear wiper or rear seat, all in the name of saving weight, but they didn't actually save that much weight. It's only like 50 pounds less than a standard JCW Mini. But what I do like about it is it's just kind of cool having like one of 500 in the States, 2,000 globally, right? That's a little bit exclusive. I think that's really cool. And I think they're so fun. I really do. If you have a small amount of money just to spend on a weekend fun car, these Minis are great. Okay, small amount of money is the wrong term. If you have a small money to buy and then a lot of money to keep them maintained, because they are BMWs. Now, over the last couple of years, not too much has gone wrong with this over the last few thousand miles. It needed a thermostat, and I've got this occasional limp mode problem that just started because of a Vanos actuator. But, you know, they can be fairly reliable if you don't drive them. Go figure. If you don't use something, it doesn't break. Now on the inside, certainly some of the ugliness does continue. There's this horrible stain here in the middle of the seat. I don't know if you can see that. I can't get this out to save my life, but it's this big white splotch, and it's just part of the car now. It's I don't know, it's impossible to get out. And like the leather's seen some wear. And then up here, these cars have these really nice stitched leather dashboards. And this one from, I think, sitting out in the sun has kind of come up and starting to peel over time. I did ask Mini, I said, how much does it cost for a new dashboard? The part itself, not even including installation, which requires like removal of the interior, $5 grand for a new stitched leather dash. $5,000. And that's kind of my attitude with this car, right? Mechanically, I want to keep it perfect, but like these little cosmetic things like over here, the wear on this bolster, right? I'm just going to leave it, it's coming up a little bit there. It's just going to cost so much money to get this thing perfect that I really can't justify it. So I'm going to keep it perfect mechanically, really take care of it that way, but just enjoy it for what it is, drive it in the autocross, and just leave these little niggly bits be. So yes, am I crazy for buying a GP that is, probably one of the worst in the country? Financially, maybe a little bit, but even in rough shape, these things are still appreciating, and people are liking these more and more as they start to age. And for what I need it for just putzing around some cones, I think it's perfect, and I'm really excited to join that community. Now let me know what you think in the comments section below. As always, head over to tflcar.com for the latest and greatest in new car reviews.